Sup, y'all? It's me. It's your boy Asmongold, and as a lot of you guys probably know by now, patch 7.3, the patch that takes us to Argus, came out on the PTR about a couple of weeks ago. So ever since then, of course, people have been putting out videos like crazy about Argus, the new mounts, the new tier sets, the new raid, the new ore, and everything else in between. Even I've made a couple of videos as well to try to get people as prepared and hyped up really for Argus as possible. Well, I do care about making videos like that. It's interesting, but what I really care about a lot more is talking about the metagame. Not actually the changes that are happening in the game, but what those changes are going to do to the game and the emergent player behavior that's going to come out of those changes, which is what I want to do with you guys today. Oftentimes, whenever a new patch comes out, people are like, oh my god, this is the greatest patch ever, and then like a couple of weeks later, people are like, oh my god, this is the worst patch ever. So I would try to break that cycle and I guess look at patch 7.3 in a more critical perspective and talk to you guys about some things that I think are very important to discuss in regards to 7.3. Now, ultimately, I want to give you some insight into the way that I play WoW and the way I've always played WoW, and what's important to me is that I don't really care about fun. I don't play the game for fun. I don't have fun. Fun is for casuals. I have fun winning. And I enjoy winning. That's what I like to do. I don't like to have fun. I like to win. I have fun whenever I win, but it's definitely in that direction of a cause and effect, right? I'm not going to have fun if I'm losing or I'm doing something that I feel is a waste of time. What WoW really used to have is it used to have the idea that anything that you were doing actually had a tangible end and it actually meant something. People would go and they would farm boars in Elwynn Forest for 8 hours a day, and they would feel, they'd go to bed and they'd feel accomplished. They'd feel like they did something with their time. And I feel like that's something that the game is lacking a little bit. Now, obviously, patch 7.3 is completely huge, right? It's bringing us to an entirely new planet, and it's just a small content patch. Well, it's not a small content patch, but it is still just a content patch. It's not an expansion. I actually had to do a couple of takes in this video whenever I accidentally called the Argus patch an expansion. And so, obviously, there's a ton of stuff that's coming out with this, but ultimately, what really changes in the game? Whenever you log on, you're going to do the Argus questline, which will probably take between 2 to 10 hours, and then after you finish that questline, what are you really going to do? You'll probably do the raid a couple of times, maybe do the dungeons a couple of times, and there are the Legion invasion points that are coming out or have already came out, which are going to be similar, I think, to like rifts or something in Diablo. But ultimately, there isn't really a lot that's going to be changing in terms of the ultimate paradigm of how Legion works, and I think that's really what matters, right? It's like whenever you're looking at a car, right? You can look at the car and you can say this is a really cool looking car, but you can have the coolest looking car in the world, but if the nuts and bolts in that car are not tightened in properly or not using the right ones, then the car is just going to be a piece of junk. And I feel like that's kind of one of the problems with Legion, is that Legion has been an amazing expansion in terms of the lore to it. I think it's had really good lore. I think there have been a lot of very positive things to it. There's been a lot of content. There's been a lot of things that you can do. And in general, Legion has been definitely a huge upgrade from Warlords of Draenor, and I think arguably it's probably better than Mists of Pandaria, although that might just be because I just hate pandas. So ultimately, those things, the sense of reward, the sense of gratification that you get is not really going to change whenever 7.3 comes out. Nothing is going to really change in terms of what you do whenever you log on, right? You're going to do the initial quests, you're going to be in a different area, but you're still going to be killing, demons in that area instead of in Val'sharah. So there's nothing that's really going to change in terms of gameplay. It's just going to be the location of that gameplay is going to be different. Now, obviously that brings up a huge problem, and I feel like that's something that Blizzard really needs to address, is Legion has been, in a lot of different ways, a phenomenal expansion. But I feel like it's been not sabotaged, but it's been hindered by the systems that are present in Legion, right? So for a lot of people, I think the legendary system is probably the thing that the most people can agree on. It is not necessarily the best system in the game, especially if you play in any sort of a competitive manner. The Titan Forging thing is kind of more of a lesser thing, and then if you're a very casual player, maybe artifact power and leveling up your artifact weapon isn't really as bad, but that probably should be solved by now. So it's mostly just the legendaries and just the repetitive nature of a lot of the content. Whenever you really do any of the Legion content, whenever Antorus, which is the new raid, comes out, you'll have the LFR, you'll have the normal mode. Many people clear the normal mode version of the raid in probably the first day or at least the first week. People that raid seriously, that care about that kind of stuff. So what are those people going to do for the entire rest of the patch? What they're going to do is they're just going to do different difficulties of that same raid, which I can understand is like, of course, how much content can they really make, but all of the content in Legion has been basically put on a flat level. You're able to access and do all of the content in the entire game with relatively no barriers to entry. And you can argue that that's been a good thing, but at the same time, people are able to just access everything and then do it, and then they're not really going to keep doing it afterwards. There's a certain level of diminishing returns whenever you've already killed a boss on an easier difficulty and now you're killing it on a harder difficulty, unless it's like some sort of a super hard mythic raid boss and you're like one of the first guilds to ever do it. But besides that, you don't really have that same sense of satisfaction. And I think that's something that Blizzard really needs to deal with and they need to address. And I don't really know entirely what they could do to do that, but 7.3, 7.3 does not really address any of those core concerns and core problems that Legion has had ever since the expansion first came out. And I feel like that's really what Blizzard should look at. And will 7.3 bring players back? I think it will bring more people back to the game than any other content patch that's come out in probably the last 5 years. In terms of the proportion of people that are playing, people that are going to come back. Obviously, some more people might be coming back whenever there are more people playing the game in general, but I would say that a lot of people are going to be enticed to come back and play Argus and go through all of the content, but the real question that comes up is that how long are they going to stay there? And I think that's really what Legion needs to work on and what Blizzard needs to take forward for the next expansion, is making sure that there's repeatable content where people feel like they're not wasting their time. A lot of times, every single time a new patch comes out, all of the gear that you've had just becomes completely invalidated, and all of the progress that you've made doesn't really matter anymore. If you just look at somebody that was full Nighthold Mythic geared, compare them to somebody who's normal mode TOS geared, there's basically no difference. So the rate at which gear kind of it replaces itself, I think is also kind of a problem. And of course, that's kind of a symptom of having Titan Forging and all of the gear RNG on top of multiple difficulties, and also scaling LFR, not LFR, Mythic Plus, and all of the Mythic dungeons that have just been scaled up in like, I think it was like 7.2 or 7.3, or 7.1 or 7.2. So I feel like that kind of stuff really does, I think it makes people feel like their time isn't really worthwhile, because they know that the gains they make in the game are so temporary that they're not really worth pursuing. And I'd like to see Legion and Blizzard hopefully spread that out a little bit more. Now, obviously, you don't want to have all the gear from the last raid be better than all the gear from the next raid, of course, but there needs to be the raids need to be a little bit closer together, I would say, in order for players to feel like they're not just going to fall behind immediately. I have people all the time telling me that, is it too late for me to start playing WoW again? I stopped at like 860 and I came back and everybody's 900 now. And so while there are catch-up mechanisms and it's completely possible to get geared up very quickly, for somebody to invest a lot of time, especially on a hardcore level, into their character, it doesn't really feel like it's as rewarding because it's so fleeting. So I'd like to see Blizzard do something about that, and 7.3 I don't really feel like is going to deliver that. They're going to be doing a lot of changes to like crafted gear, to make crafted gear go up to 915 with different obliterum and different reagents and stuff like that, which is nice, but ultimately I don't really think that's going to change gameplay. Whenever you log on, if you're logging on in Argus or in Azeroth, you're going to be doing the same thing. And if that thing itself is not engaging and it doesn't make somebody feel like they're not wasting their time, then it's going to give the same result. It doesn't really matter what the scenery is. So that's really my opinion on the subject. I know that this might not be like the most popular opinion, or I know a lot of people are like really excited and they're like, oh my god, this is going to be great. Why are you saying it's not going to be great? I'm sure it's going to be a lot of fun, but it's not really going to solve the core problems that the game, I believe, still has. So hopefully Blizzard will take this into consideration. They put a lot of really big work, a lot of work into Legion, and I just feel like that work is being subverted by a lot of very contrived and unfun systems that players interface with. So hopefully 7.3, there's still time for 7.3 to maybe address some of those issues, But until I feel like the game does do that, it's still going to have the very cyclical nature, and you're still going to have players feeling like they're very apathetic because their time doesn't really have any lasting value. And of course, you never really have any real lasting value, but the scale of the lasting value needs to be a little bit bigger, if that makes sense. So anyway, guys, that's pretty much what I think. That's my real talk for 7.3. Will 7.3 bring back more players? At the beginning, yes, probably more than usual, but I don't really think that many more people are going to stick around. So that's the TLDR. Anyway, well, I don't know why I put the TLDR at the end of the video, because you obviously watched, but that's what I think. That's a summary. Anyway, guys, thanks a lot for watching, and like, comment, and subscribe.